The first noble who laughed at Caleb Oren's sewing needles stopped laughing when a palace blade snapped against cloth. And by sunrise, every assassin in the Sapphire Dominion feared the Coronation Robe more than the royal guard. Princess Illyra Valor stood in the fitting chamber while servants lifted silver silk around her like moonlight. The robe was meant to prove trust. No armor, no shield, no hidden weapon, only beauty before the Empire. Because Old Dominion law said a sovereign must face the crown bare and undefended. Caleb, the human tailor assigned by treaty, read the design once, looked at the princess's exposed heart and throat, then said, "Your Highness, this robe is a funeral invitation." The room went cold. Lord Keth demanded his arrest. Guards touched their pulse spears, and every servant stared as if the human had spat on a star. Illyra only raised her hand. She knew ceremony could be a battlefield dressed as music, because 3 royal deaths had already been wrapped in perfect court language, so she asked what Caleb would change. Caleb opened his battered case, removed dull gray thread, looped it around a crystal chair, and pulled until the chair leg cracked first. Then the needle struck metal. Caleb had not brought plates or chain. Alien scanners would find those. He brought starship tether fiber, emergency hull mesh, pressure weave, and medfoam filament from human colony suits. He told Illyra humans learned early that the universe was full of teeth. Vacuum, fire, betrayal, and doors that failed at the worst moment. So human cloth had always carried survival inside it. For 7 nights he worked, stitching kinetic mesh beneath silk, pulse sprayed along the spine, shock gel beads disguised as pearls. Microseal seams at the throat censor seeds in the veil. And tourniquet bands inside the sleeves, each edition violated tradition, but not law. Because humans treated rules like locked doors, not sacred walls. When Lord Keth complained that purity would be ruined, Caleb bowed and said purity was what powerful people demanded from those they planned to leave defenseless. It's for one dangerous heartbeat. Illyra almost smiled outside the chamber. Assassins counted footsteps. On the 8th night, Illyra came alone, barefoot. Carrying the ceremonial veil, she asked if Caleb thought she was weak for wearing what the court demanded. Human tailors measured more than shoulders and sleeves. They measured hesitation, grief, and old bruises beneath perfect posture. Caleb had sewn burial flags on Baron's Fall, after raiders burned a colony the Dominion had promised to protect. So he threaded another needle and said, "Weakness is not fear, Your Highness. Weakness is pretending no one is coming with a knife." Illyra sat beside him. No crown, no court voice. Only a young woman surrounded by polished enemies. She told him her brother Van had wanted alliance with humanity before his sky skimmer fell from a windless sky. Caleb listened, then sewed heat and chemical sensors into the veil's edge. A silent warning net. By dawn, the robe looked harmless. 7 embroidered moons glowing down the train. Lord Keth scanned it and found only approved silk, pearl and royal thread. When Keth leaned near, Caleb smelled bitter spice on his gloves, the same scent carried by 2 dead food tasters. He said nothing. Silence was also a stitch. The coronation began beneath the glass dome of Aurelius Prime, with every admiral, priest, trade prince, and noble house watching. Illyra walked the crystal aisle alone, throat exposed, hands bare. Exactly as tradition demanded, the crowd approved. Predators always loved exposed throats. Caleb stood among servants by the western pillars, empty case in hand, when the high priest lifted the star crown. The veil warmed against Illyra's temples. Inside the robe, pressure lines tightened across her skin. Left balcony, chemical trace, hostile movement, guard line breach. The robe knew before the Empire did. Illyra turned one breath before the first dart fired. It struck the moon over her heart and flattened like rain on stone. The second attack came as invisible poison mist from a priest's ring, but the veil sealed across her mouth and nose in a clear mask. The third assassin burst from the guard line with a phase knife, shouting that old blood would never kneel to a treaty queen. Illyra lifted her sleeve. The hidden bands hardened into a bracer. The knife struck, sparks burst, and the attacker's wrist shattered from his own force. Then Caleb moved. He vaulted the servant rail, seized a fallen spear, and threw it at the chandelier chain above the western balcony. The crystal sun crashed down across Lord Ket's escape path. Trapping him and 3 armed nobles behind broken light, Keth drew a hidden pulse pistol. Caleb crossed the floor with Tailor's scissors in his fist. Ridiculous, small, human, and perfect. The scissors struck the firing crystal, cracked it, and the pistol burst in Keth's hand. Guards loyal to Illyra dragged traitors into the open, all proof of a court that had mistaken grace for helplessness. Illyra did not shake when the crown touched her head. Smoke curled around her scarred robe, silver silk torn but unbroken. And her first decree carried through the dome like thunder. Any tradition that requires a ruler to die beautifully will be cut from this empire like rot from a wound. No child, worker, soldier, or sovereign of the Dominion will ever again be taught that dignity means standing unprotected before a blade. The nobles bowed because they had to. The people cheered because they understood. And Caleb finally let himself breathe. No one laughed at the human Tailor again. In the years that followed, the Sapphire Dominion changed. Human engineers reinforced royal ships, human medics trained palace healers, and human tailors became the most feared artisans in noble courts. A hem might hide a beacon, a wedding veil might seal against poison, a child's cloak might survive fire. Caleb refused estates and titles, accepting only a workshop beneath the eastern tower and the right to teach anyone with steady hands. On her 10th coronation anniversary, Illyra wore the original robe again, repaired but never restored. Every scar outlined in silver thread, a child asked why the queen wore damaged cloth on the proudest day of the year. Illyra touched the flattened moon over her heart and smiled toward Caleb. "Because this was the first crown I earned," she said. "And because a human taught us that beauty need not be fragile, peace need not be helpless. And survival, when sown with love, can look like grace."